All right, another Josh cast. Another day, another Josh cast. Another day, another Josh cast. Another day, another Josh cast. Watched a documentary about the Stephen Sondheim musical, Merrily We Roll Along. It charted the paths of the actors who were in it. The crux of it is that everyone expected that it was going to be this great success because Sondheim wrote it, Prince directed it, and they were this unstoppable Broadway team. And then it came out and it got savaged and closed after 16 performances, but then built up a cult following and now is very popular. So perhaps it was ahead of its time, but it charted the they followed some of the actors throughout their lives. One of them was Jason Alexander, and the other ones were people who were not on Seinfeld. Not to diminish who they were or what they were doing. I don't mean to diminish that at all. It just was kind of a flagrant, one guy became a Broadway actor, another one became a Broadway director, another one taught theater to students. All that was great. They've all, one became a writer and a correspondent, and they all had great lives. And then one of them was on one of the greatest sitcoms of the 20th century and became a millionaire. But listen, it's not about, this isn't, this isn't a competition here. That's not a competition. That's not what this is about. That is not what this is about at all. This is, everyone has their own journey. Everyone has their own journey. And I guess they're all talking about, and I should preface it by also explaining that Merrily We Roll Along, the musical itself, it's backwards. So it starts with three people who are in middle age and bitter, and it charts their lives backwards so that it ends with them just about to graduate high school and they're full of hope and joy, which somehow, and I have never seen the musical, but just based on that premise, that takes my depression and just multiplies it by 1,000. It somehow makes it even more tragic. And maybe that's why the musical didn't do well in the beginning, because it was, not that it was bad, but perhaps it was, dare I say, too close to home. What's the message of this musical? You've lost everything you ever wanted. Your dreams have fallen apart through your fingers, and it's your fault. What would you say is the moral of Merrily Roll Along? Well, basically that there is no hope, and the life that you dreamed of will never happen. Even if you get everything you want, you're not going to like it. So one way or another, life is horrible, and then you're going to die. We all came together, and we're going to write some happy songs about it. That could be what the theme was, and that could be. I can understand, given our current circumstances, I wouldn't want to watch this musical at this point. $3 million people are unemployed. And the 3 million people. If we don't reverse this soon and cleverly, this could be another massive, massive depression. This could be This could be the beginning of a really long, horrible decade. But here's the good news. If we survive this, we can so lord it over the next generation. Oh, you think you had it bad? Oh, this plague wiped half of us out, and the other half were broke for 20 years. We can make our children feel so guilty. Just try to hold on to that as you survive this. The ability to make the next generation feel horrible. That's what you need to fight for, everybody. That's why we can't give up. That's why we've got to keep going. We've got to live long enough to make children's lives miserable, because that's what being a human being is. Now get back out there and don't go out there. Stay inside. Get back in your cave and don't come out for 10 months. Hopefully the sniffling is from dust. I usually get the sniffles in the morning. But back to Merrily, we roll along. So based on all that notion, that it's a musical about even what, life, really, and your dreams when you're young versus the reality. I just wanted one of the other actors who was not Jason Alexander to go, but he got what I hate Jason Alexander. I want to kill him right now. I wanted that to just bubble over. They were all very mature, and they've all learned a lot, and they're very loving people. I just wanted one of them to deeply, deeply, deeply resent Jason Alexander as much as I do for being successful. I just want to know I'm not the only one who's not evolved. I need that. And Jason Alexander was talking about how, even when he got the fame and everything, it wasn't the quote, I thought there'd be more plumes. That was the quote that he kept saying from Pippin, that it wasn't what he thought it would be. And here's the thing. I believe him. I believe that it wasn't what he thought it would be. And he learned something, and he realized, probably something to the effect that family and love and artistic passion are more important than the trappings of wealth and success. I totally get that. All I am saying is, if I had to choose between never being wealthy and famous and being wealthy and famous and learning the lesson that it's not all that it's cracked up to be, I would still rather be wealthy and famous and learn that it's not all that it's cracked up to be. I would love to learn that lesson. I am ready, willing, and able to learn that lesson right now. Beware what you wish for. Well, at this point, it really seems like my choice is death by plague or poverty and death by something else tangentially related to it. So I figure if I'm going to wish for anything, let's go for the mansion. I'm feeling good about this podcast. I really am, actually. So I watched that. Then I watched a documentary about the guy who was Stanley Kubrick's assistant. And I noticed there's another documentary about the guy who is Stanley Kubrick's driver. And my immediate thought was, all right, how many people who know Stanley Kubrick are going to get a documentary now? This is ridiculous. My name is Arthur Hopkins, and I was Stanley Kubrick's proctologist. It was very distracting to be performing a colonoscopy and having him tell me that the camera angles were just simply not right and that I needed a different lens. But, as it turns out, after we put in the lens and we made the adjustments, he was 100% correct. The angle was much better, and I must say it was the most well-photographed colonoscopy I have ever done in my professional life. And even in my personal life, because I have done personal colonoscopies that I shouldn't even be talking about in a documentary, because that is patently illegal. He was an artist, and now because of him, some of his art has come to me. And now people come to me when they want colonoscopies that will give them the same adventure that they felt when they watched 2001: A Space Odyssey or Dr. Strangelove. So, but then I watched the documentary, and it was about his assistant. The guy who gave, this is amazing, because his assistant guy was an actor, an accomplished actor, who had a career and threw it all away because he was so devoted to Stanley Kubrick and he so believed in his vision that he became the guy's go-to assistant for everything from helping with the editing to helping with the casting to helping with the processing of the film and getting it to the distributors and the marketing. And he gave his life, totally. And just was totally dedicated and is fine with it. And everyone else was looking at him like he's crazy. And it's such an interesting viewpoint. Now, the thing is that the irony of this is that for all the rest of us who are out, chasing our own egos, I gotta say, he seemed a lot more at peace than the other people being interviewed who were actors and writers and directors, who were trying to do their own thing. So I think there's a lesson there. He did what he loved, and even though it was incredibly stressful, he loved to be this guy's assistant. And I gotta say, he made good movies. It would be a lot harder to make a documentary about the assistant of a guy who didn't make good movies. What was it like working for Schnapsy Schlopsnick? Well, frankly, it was really a part-time job. We would do one or two takes, and he'd go, "That's good enough," and I'd say, "Schnapsy, they didn't even get the lines right. Schnapsy, the part of the set fell over. They know it's a movie. They get the idea. They know it takes place in space. It says so on the title of the movie. They'll put two and two together." I'd like to consider myself an acolyte of Schnapsy. A Schnapsy acolyte, if you will. None of his movies ever made money. Doesn't matter, though. We made a collection. I'm preserving his work. This is one of my favorites that he did. Space Investors. It's part science fiction, part financial melodrama. Really good. It was hard to make the make the ties that they were wearing, float because they were at 0G. So halfway through, he said, we'll just write in that the ship has artificial gravity. It'll be fine. Science fiction. Yeah, Schnapsy. There was a director. I'd give my life for that man. Unfortunately, a few years ago, he's no longer with us. He moved to Phoenix, and we still talk, but he's not making movies anymore, so now I'm just trying to preserve his legacy. Make sure that these copies of Space Investors and Shoe Repairman from Mars and The Woman Who Would Be a Stenographer on Mars, these are preserved for future generations. All right, that's good enough. That's finally feeling like a normal podcast of mine.